Hello and welcome back. Today we're going to dive into domains and kingdoms. So we're really going to focus on those really broad aspects of classification and how we have differentiated between the domains that we have, the three domains that we have, and the various kingdoms that fall within those domains. So let's dive in to our key concept. There are three domains. The current tree of life has three domains that we're going to focus on. We have bacteria, which I know you've heard that word before. So bacteria is its own domain. That's a very broad umbrella term. All bacteria that use oxygen fall under this domain. Then there's archaea, and archaea are another type of bacteria, but they are extremophiles, which means they live in really, really extreme environments. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And then the last domain is eukarya or eukaryota, and that includes every single organism that would be a eukaryote or have cells that have a nucleus. So three main domains that we are going to talk about. When we were making the tree of life, which is what we've been talking about for the past couple of days, we as scientists didn't fully understand all of the different parts. So classification is always a work in progress. The tree of life that I just showed you on the previous slide is our most current understanding of the way that organisms are split. But new discoveries happen all the time, and new discoveries can lead to changes in the way that we classify organisms. So up until 1866, there were actually only two kingdoms that we sort of made a point of calling kingdoms, and that was Animalia and Plantae. I'm sure that this makes sense because in 1866, we weren't looking at bacteria, right? That's very small. They're very small, and microscopes weren't really a huge thing. They became a huge thing, but up until 1866, we could see animals with our eyes, we could see plants with our eyes, we knew that they were different things, and so we classified them into two kingdoms, Animalia and Plantae. After 1866, single-celled organisms were observed, and they moved all of the single-celled organisms out of those two kingdoms that were previously the only two kingdoms and created a third kingdom, which is called Protista. We will learn way more about protists as we get into the next set of notes, which is all about protists and fungi. But until then, this was our third kingdom that we recognized as its own kingdom. Fast forward a number of years into 1938. And so then we pulled out all of the prokaryotes. So we differentiated now between eukaryotes and prokaryotes, and we took all the prokaryotes that were previously in those three kingdoms, and we moved them into a new kingdom called Monera. All right, now we're getting somewhere. We're starting to see things that look a little bit more familiar. So now we have four kingdoms, and then about 20 years after that, we recognized fungi as its own kingdom, and so we made a new branch off of the tree of life. Now we have 5 branches, and we're feeling pretty good about this. It's sort of covering all of our bases, but oh wait, actually, Monera is kind of like a super group. We don't like that. We would like to classify them a little bit more specifically, and so Kingdom Monera was split in 1977 into two separate kingdoms, split into the Kingdom Bacteria and the Kingdom Archaea. And now you're probably thinking to yourself, those words sound familiar. And yeah, they should, because bacteria and archaea are actually domains and kingdoms. So bacteria is a domain, and then the kingdom right below domain bacteria is also kingdom bacteria. I know. It's a little repetitive, but it's important to differentiate between bacteria and archaea because they are so very different. And then fungi, Animalia, Plantae, and Protista all fall under the domain Eukarya. So, as I said, the three domains are Eukarya, Bacteria, and Archaea. Domains are above the kingdom level. They contain more organisms than kingdoms. They're more broad. So when we're saying domain bacteria, that includes every bacteria under it. when we're saying domain eukarya, that means we are talking about all plants, all fungi, all animals, all protists, all things that have a eukaryotic cell base would fall under that domain. We can then get more specific as we move down the taxa, but domains are super broad. And these domains were proposed based on genetic studies of prokaryotes, which is crazy that we spent so much time focusing on prokaryotes, and because of that, we could see just how different all of those bacteria really were. We saw all the diversity that was within those prokaryotes, and that's why we separated out Monera into bacteria and archaea. So talking about those domains, the prokaryote domains, we're going to start with bacteria. And this includes prokaryotes within the kingdom Bacteria. This is one of the largest groups of organisms on Earth. There are so many bacteria, so many. I don't even have a number because it's constantly increasing. But these bacteria are classified by the shape that they have, and there are multiple shapes that fall within this domain, but they're classified by shape, their need for oxygen, and the diseases that they cause. So bacteria are sort of like all of the bacteria that you would think of, like, common cold bacteria, that would fall under this domain. Most like E. coli, that would be under this domain. Domain Archaea, though, also includes prokaryotes within the kingdom Archaea, but they are chemically different from bacteria, from the bacteria we were just talking about. Their cell walls are chemically different, and they're known for living in extreme environments. They are extremophiles. They can live in places that previously were thought to not hold life at all or be incapable of holding life at all. We're talking like hot springs, volcanoes, places with little to no oxygen, super salty waters. They're called halophiles if they live there. But anywhere, they're finding that they can live pretty much anywhere. We're talking like some archaea were found in like a sewage plant, just chilling, just doing their own thing, just living their life because they like to live in these extreme environments, and they are successful living in these extreme environments. And our last domain that we're going to talk about is eukarya. We're going to dive way deeper into these specific kingdoms, but you kind of know about these kingdoms already, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. Kingdom Protista is probably the one you're least familiar with, but we're talking single-celled organisms that have a nucleus in them, so they're under eukarya, but you probably don't know too much about them, but we'll talk about them in the next set of notes. Kingdom Fungi, there are so many different funguses in the world, but you probably would recognize a mushroom that looks like this, right? This is like your stereotypical like Alice in Wonderland mushroom. And then Kingdom Plantae and Kingdom Animalia, your typical plants and animals that you know and love in the world around you, right? We'll talk about all of these kingdoms a little bit more in detail in the upcoming set of notes, but this is just to kind of get you excited and get you ready to learn about all of these different domains. Great job. I'll see you next time.